The saddest part about it is that the news media told me the police officer shot my son. They didn't want to say who. They didn't want to say what the prior crime consisted of. As that police officer was closing my door that day, he was like, and besides, it's going to be on the news. And after he closed my door that day, my phone started ringing from friends and family saying, Sharise, tell me this ain't true. And I'm like, how do y'all know? And they was like, the news. So that's how I found out a lot of my information. His character was ruined. They described a totally different child from what he was, you know what I'm saying? And they make him seem like he's this terrible thug kid, that mama is greedy and all this kind of stuff. At the end of the day, Sebastian, I'd rather have my son back than all the money in the world. Money ain't nothing, Sebastian. I have to work now until I'm 67. So I'm still work, whether I have money or not. I'm comfortable. I pay all my bills, you know what I'm saying? I feel in my heart, and I want to believe, and this is how I find peace with the whole situation, is that if this police officer just wake up to say, I'm finna go kill somebody today, no, I don't feel like that. You know what I'm saying? I hope and I prayed about the whole situation that he's not this angry, vicious person that just says, I got the right to kill and stuff. But at the end of the day, I want closure, but I want closure with who Robert was, of him, not of what they say he is. I want closure for justice of my son, but for everybody that felt like this whole situation was right, to just do this right here, I want closure for that. I want justice for that, because I want, at the end of the day, everybody to be treated equally, no matter what color you are, no matter what race, because at the end of the day, when our skin is cut, we all bleed blood, just different types.
Why did a cop shoot Robert Chambers in the head? Police say the Georgia teen was armed and dangerous. His family and their lawyers smell a cover-up. Article from the Huffington Post. Written by Sebastian Murdock and Christopher Mathias. October 16, 2015. Updated October 18, 2015. It felt about as cold as it can get in Warner Robins, Georgia, in the early morning hours of January 24, 2011. Robert Chambers, 19, saw his breath as he walked along the dirt path that traced the edge of a wooded area near Fegan Mill Middle School. Maybe he thought about girls. Everyone knew Chambers as a ladies' man who carried his skinny, 5'8" frame with considerable swagger. Just the day before, Chambers had stood in a driveway with two neighborhood girls, flirting and laughing. Maybe he thought about his future. He had dreams of being a contractor one day and building a community center for teens who needed a place to go to stay out of trouble. Like many young men his age in that part of the state, Chambers had dropped out of high school, but was working on getting his GED. In the meantime, he just wanted a job. That morning, just as he did on many mornings, Chambers made the 50-minute walk from his mother's home to the 5-star Nissan dealership, where he'd often ask for work detailing cars. He also expected a call that day about a job at a local grocery store. Maybe his thoughts turned to his family. His mother, whom he adored, was raising Chambers and his younger brother, Rodrich, and sister, Katrina, on her own, working 2 jobs to provide for the kids. Maybe he thought about his siblings, who always went to him for guidance, or his uncle, who'd always been a father figure. But there's no way Chambers thought about what cops say he thought about that morning, his friends and family attest. Chambers was non-confrontational. He always avoided violence. He never even really got into trouble, for God's sake, and in a town where police arrested twice as many blacks as whites, Chambers, an African American, had no criminal history. Photo 2. From left to right, Robert Chambers as a baby, a photo taken from the program at Chambers' funeral, and Chambers as a child. His family says it's unlikely he would have been involved in the burglary that cops say he committed just before he was killed. Source: courtesy, Sharise Wells. Yet later that morning, his mother, Sharise Wells, heard a knock on the door. A police officer stood in the doorway, along with the coroner. Just a few minutes away from Wells' home, her son's body lay in the dirt, blood pooling from his head. Next to him was a gun, which a Huffington County officer said Chambers had dropped before the officer fatally shot him. Aside from the cop, who was unhurt, no one saw what happened. Police said Chambers had burglarized a nearby home, stolen a gun, and put a cop's life in jeopardy. But maybe he didn't. Last month, lawyers for the Chambers family filed damning new court papers alleging that the Huffington County Police planted evidence on Chambers' body and in the crime scene. Those court papers, including hundreds of documents and evidence, have been reviewed by the Huffington Post. Here's what police say happened. Photo 3. The house in Warner Robins, Georgia, that was burglarized on the morning of January 24, 2011. Source: Georgia Bureau of Investigations. It was the second time that month that someone had broken into the home Robert Brown shared with his son, Antoninus White. On January 12, 2011, a thief had made off with 3 guns and a PlayStation 3. So when Brown, 63, came home on January 24 to see his front door pried open, he knew it had happened again. He called the police. Huffington County Deputy Eugene Parker arrived at the residence at around 8:40 a.m. Brown told Parker he'd heard someone run out the back door, but he didn't get a look at the suspect. Nearby, 51-year-old Deputy Stephen Glidden was doing what he usually did for the department, serving civil papers to people's houses. Prior to joining the Huffington County Sheriff's Department, he'd worked as a cop down in Florida, and before that, he served in the Army for 6 years in the 80s. During his 10 years in Warner Robins, he never fired his gun in the line of duty. Photo 5. Deputy Stephen Glidden, shown here in photos from Facebook, shot Chambers in the woods near a local middle school. Source: Facebook. When he heard a call on the radio about a nearby burglary, Glidden asked his supervisors for the green light to assist Parker. He got it. 30 minutes later, a short 3-minute walk from Brown's house, Glidden searched a wooded area near Fegan Mill Middle School. He just received a call, Parker told him. A gun may have been taken from the house. Glidden turned a corner on the dirt path and saw a black teen walking alone. In a later deposition, he said Chambers had an "oh crap" look on his face. Glidden estimated the kid was 14 or 15 years old. Glidden told Chambers to remove his hands from his jacket pockets. "What's going on, why?" Chambers asked. In his deposition, Glidden described how he repeated his command, but Chambers didn't listen. Instead, he kept walking toward Glidden until the two were within a couple feet of one another. Chambers stepped to the right, as if to pass, his hands finally leaving his pockets. But out of the corner of his eye, Glidden saw something, the butt of a black semi-automatic pistol in Chambers' left pocket. Glidden says he lunged after the weapon with his right hand, and a struggle ensued. When Glidden felt Chambers reaching for his service weapon, Glidden shot him with a taser, but the electric rods couldn't pierce through Chambers' winter jacket. A camera on the taser began recording, but it got knocked out of Glidden's hand and didn't capture much. According to Glidden, he still managed to get Chambers to the ground. Seconds later, the teen got up, flinging his jacket down. The video recorded Glidden yelling for Chambers to get down. At some point, the gun Chambers had in his left jacket pocket fell out onto the ground, but Glidden didn't realize that. Chambers started to run away. Chambers ran toward a residential neighborhood. The teen still had a gun, Glidden thought, as he lifted his weapon and fired. A single round struck Chambers in the back left side of his head. He stiffened and fell to the ground. Glidden later explained. A gross miscarriage of justice. Afterward, the police didn't offer much explanation to Chambers' mother, Sharise Wells. We believe that Robert was in a prior crime that led to the shooting and killing and his death. She recalled an officer telling her at her home the day her son died. That was it. That was all the details they gave me. Wells said that before leaving her house, the officer turned around and said in passing, "Oh, and this is going to be on the news." Sure enough, Wells heard her son's name repeated on the news the following day. From the same bulletin, she learned who killed him, a cop. The newscaster said Chambers had robbed a house and stolen a gun, but Wells didn't believe it. It didn't add up. In 2013, she hired a local lawyer and filed a wrongful death lawsuit in federal court against Glidden and the Huffington County Sheriff's Department. The lawsuit dragged on for 2 years until this past August, when a judge tossed the case out of court. Glidden's use of deadly force, the judge ruled, was reasonable under the circumstances and did not violate clearly established law. A cop can legally shoot a fleeing suspect if he or she reasonably believes the person is a danger to the officer or other people. Chambers' family felt crestfallen. The police version of events would be the only one to survive in the public record. And no trial meant that the family would always feel in the dark. The family had lost faith in their lawyer, so Chris Wells, Chambers' uncle, went online to see who had represented the family of Eric Garner, the black father of 6 whose death from a police chokehold in New York grabbed national headlines and spurred massive protests. The lawyer's name was Jonathan Moore, and the family decided to contact him. It was a Hail Mary. Who knew if a big, fancy New York City law firm would take on a 4-year-old case in Georgia? Moore and his partner, Luna Drewby, both attorneys at Murdock, Levine and Hoffman, agreed to look at Chambers' death. But they made no guarantees they'd take on the case. Over the next month, the pair spent nights and weekends poring over documents, Drewby said. Once we started gathering stuff, we couldn't believe it, she said. There were fingerprints that were never analyzed, a gun that didn't match up to reports and another possible suspect in the burglary, among other inconsistencies. On September 2nd, the lawyers filed papers in court. The federal judge, they wrote, needed to reverse his previous decision. Anything else would be a gross miscarriage of justice. The Huffington County Sheriff's Department declined to comment for this story. Is this the gun? Photo 6. The gun that cops say they recovered from the scene of Chambers' death. The family's lawyers say this gun isn't the same model that White and Brown said was stolen from their house. Source: Georgia Bureau of Investigations. Drewby and Moore, the new lawyers on the case, say there are several inconsistencies surrounding the scene of the shooting. First, photographs from the woods show a blue steel Taurus PT-145 Millennium Pro .45 caliber pistol on the ground. But a police report says that White told police a different gun model was in the house that morning, a black Taurus model PT-145 .45 caliber. The first gun was a model manufactured in 2007, the second was manufactured between 2000 and 2003. Drewby and Moore allege the police planted another weapon at the scene. The lawyers filed court papers earlier this month that contend it is now certain that the gun found at the location where Mr. Chambers was killed was not the same gun owned by Antonius White. The Huffington County Sheriff's Department, in a court filing this week, blasted Drewby and Moore for peddling a conspiracy theory. The department pointed to another police report which said White had in fact reported a Millennium Pro missing from the house, and that it was the same brand, model, and type of handgun found at the scene. Another inconsistency. At 10:06 a.m. the morning of Chambers' death, Special Agent Lee Weathersby of the Georgia Bureau of Investigations, which investigates police-involved shootings in the state, took a time-stamped photo from the scene. It shows the gun Chambers allegedly stole, clearly visible on the ground. Yet just 20 minutes after the first photo was shot, another photo taken at 10:26 a.m. by a Sheriff's Department investigator shows the same gun covered in leaves. Photo 7. On the left, a photo of the gun taken at 10:06 a.m. On the right, a photo of the gun taken at 10:26 a.m. Source: Murdock, Levine and Hoffman. This is direct evidence that officers at the scene of the murder tampered with the evidence and quite likely fabricated such evidence. Drubby and Moore claim in the court filing. The Sheriff's Department, in its response to the filing, said it's likely that the timestamps are incorrect and that the photo showing the gun covered in leaves was taken first. The leaves were then removed, the department argued in court papers, so officers could verify what type of gun it was. What's more, it's unclear what happened to the gun. Contrary to a police account of that morning, Chris Wells, Chambers' uncle, said in a sworn affidavit in the lawsuit that Antonius White, whose house was broken into, told him that neither White nor his father entered the house when cops were investigating the burglary, and therefore never saw whether the weapon was actually missing. Wells' affidavit also says that according to White, police still have the gun and have refused to return it, citing pending litigation. White declined to comment for this story, and Brown could not be reached. This is direct evidence that officers at the scene of the murder tampered with the evidence and quite likely fabricated such evidence. Drubby and Moore. By his own admission, Glidden says he didn't see a gun on Chambers as he ran. Glidden also didn't give Chambers a warning that he would shoot if the teen didn't stop fleeing. The cop said he needed to shoot because he still thought Chambers was armed. He saw the butt of the pistol in the teen's left pocket, and didn't realize it had fallen out in the struggle. But the lawyers point out a few questions. Why would Glidden let Chambers pass so close to him, a matter of inches, according to his testimony, if he thought the teen might be armed? Why not draw his gun then? And why would Chambers, who his mother says was right-handed, keep a gun in his left pocket, where he'd need his left hand to access it? As the Sheriff's Department pointed out in its court filing this week, there is evidence tying Chambers to the burglary that day. Thumb drives and a TV remote, stolen from the house, were found on or near his body. But Chambers' family's lawyers maintain that these two could have been planted. Plus, they argue, a laptop stolen from the house that morning was never recovered. If Chambers committed the burglary, where is the laptop? In court papers, the family contends that Glidden knew Chambers was unarmed when he shot him, and his fellow police officers have conspired to cover up the true circumstances of the young man's death. Glidden was advised by his lawyer not to talk to Huff Post for this story. Dusting for fingerprints. Photo 8. The television inside Robert Brown's house, smudged with fingerprints. Source: Georgia Bureau of Investigations. Hours after Chambers' death, back at the burgled house, GBI Special Agent Jason Shoudle took a photograph of a sharp flat-screen television. It had been moved to the middle of the living room during the burglary. Smudges of fingerprints covered the screen. Shoudle lifted the fingerprints from the TV onto 3x5-inch index cards. He did the same with suspected prints on the front screen door of the house, which had been pried open during the burglary. The next day, Weathersby, the GBI agent, watched as a medical examiner took ink fingerprint impressions from Chambers' dead body. Photo 9. Fingerprints taken from the body of Robert Chambers. Source: Georgia Bureau of Investigations. But these two sets of fingerprints were never analyzed for a match. Nothing, it seems, could link Chambers more directly to the house than his own fingerprints, yet investigators appear to have never taken this step. Curious, right? Drubby, the lawyer, told Huff Post. The day after Shoudle lifted the fingerprints from the TV and the screen door, he handed the prints over to the Houston County Sheriff's Department, a request under Georgia's Open Records Act revealed. The very fact that GBI handed those records back to the Houston County Sheriff's Department, when they're supposed to be an investigative agency that's separate from the Houston County Sheriff's Office, is entirely questionable, Drubby said. They're supposed to be doing this analysis completely independently, so why would they then share that information with the Houston County Sheriff's Department? GBI's special agent in charge, Lisa Harris, who runs the Bureau's open records requests, told Huff Post that GBI handled only the investigation into Chambers' death, not the investigation into the burglary. The agency handed the prints over because they weren't trying to figure out who broke into the house, she said. The Sheriff's Department insisted to Huff Post that GBI had matched prints to those taken from the TV and the front door, but Harris said that wasn't the case. Photo 10 and sketch photo 11. A police sketch created by GBI shows the location of Chambers' body, Exhibit 7. Near Exhibit 2 is where Glidden said he took his shot, striking the teen in the back left side of the head. The family's lawyers have noted that it's odd Chambers would be hit in the left side, when his right side was the one more likely facing the officer. The bullet casing, Exhibit 9, was found 30 feet from where Glidden said he fired, Drewby said. Source: Georgia Bureau of Investigations. The lawyers find this account problematic. How could the bullet have gone into the left side of Chambers' head if Glidden was facing Chambers' right side? More troubling, Glidden's bullet case sat more than 30 feet from where he said he shot Chambers, the attorneys said. Drewby believes Glidden took his shot at Chambers from much closer than he described. Crime scene photos of Chambers' body add to Drewby's skepticism. In one photo, a trail of blood and brain matter stains the dirt path several inches above Chambers' head. The photos also show the teen's shirt and sweater lifted up, exposing his bare back. Chambers, who died instantly, can be seen with grass clippings only on the right side of his arm. Drewby said this is evidence that the teen's body was dragged after his death. She said Glidden likely stopped dragging the teen when he noticed the trail of blood and drag marks in the dirt path he created. Photo was no longer available on this content's website. The other suspect. As units began to arrive on the scene of the burglary, 2 sheriff's deputies went to check on a possible suspect that lived in the area. That suspect is mentioned only once in more than a dozen police reports, and the deputies ultimately said they could not find him. Lawyers for the Chambers family say this man could be their burglar. The man, in his 20s, is not being named because he has not been charged with this crime. But in a 2013 Facebook post, he apologized to those he robbed in the past. "Okay, if I have robbed you, or we have beef for another reason, it is over with as of tonight. I'm done with the BS and I'm sending out a worldwide apology," the post reads. The post is one of many. "You done crossed so many people you got the whole town hating on you," a Facebook friend of the man posted on his page. "I ain't never in my life think someone would cross me the way you did." According to a police report obtained by Huff Post, cops believe that whoever robbed the house on January 24, the day Chambers was killed, was also responsible for the January 12 break-in. But Chambers wasn't even in Warner Robins on January 12, he was an hour away at his sister's in Eastman. "On January 12, 2011, Robert was staying with me in Eastman, Georgia," Chambers' sister said in an affidavit in the wrongful death lawsuit. "I know that because he had just broken up with his girlfriend. He came to stay with me for 2 weeks to recover." Drewby, the lawyer, pointed out that the possible suspect whom authorities attempted to check out in connection with the break-in had been released from jail on January 6, 2011, just 6 days before the first burglary. He has been arrested at least 12 other times, and at the time lived just a 30-minute walk from Brown's, not including potential shortcuts. By the time Chambers was killed, this other suspect may have already been comfortably home, Drewby said. Drewby said police should have checked the possible suspect's fingerprints against those taken at the scene of the burglary. Any reasonably competent police officer investigating these crimes would have checked to determine if the fingerprints found at the scene of the burglary in fact matched his prints, the lawsuit alleges. The possible suspect was not available for comment. He is back in custody of the Houston County Sheriff's Department on a theft charge. I just want his name cleared. Photo 12. From left to right, Robert Chambers, Sharise Wells, Katrina Jackson, and Rodrich Wells. Source: handout. As a single parent, Wells said she relied on her 3 children to take care of her and each other. "I raised them with a bond, we have a bond," she said. "All that's been stripped. All that's been taken away from me. Now there are no more gatherings, no more celebrations, and no more laughing with her son." Wells' daughter moved to Florida, unable to live in the same town where her brother was killed. Chambers came from a family of nurses that taught him to show respect to everyone, his uncle Chris Wells said. "Robert didn't make any enemies. his uncle said. If there was ever an opportunity for there to be an altercation or anything aggressive, he was the type of person to walk away. He never wanted to be in trouble for anything. He didn't like to get in trouble, or for people to fuss at him about things he's done wrong, Sharise Wells said. He was very mannerable. It was always yes sir, no sir, with him. After Glidden fired his taser at Chambers, the weapon began recording a video of their final encounter. In the 20-second clip, the officer can be heard screaming at Chambers to get on the ground. I'm on the ground, sir, Chambers says, remaining polite. The footage doesn't offer a clear explanation of what happened. Drubby and Moore say it shows Chambers sprinting away after being forced to the ground. Seconds later, a single gunshot rings out. Sharise Wells knows her son isn't coming back. All she can ask for now is that his name be cleared. His character was ruined, she said. They described a totally different child from what he was, and they make him seem like he was this terrible thug kid. I just want his name cleared for who he was. In the meantime, Wells said she finds peace in believing that Officer Glidden is just a flawed man. Did this police officer just wake up saying I feel like killing someone today? No, I don't feel like that, she said. I hope and I pray that he's not this angry, vicious person that just says I got the right to kill. In the years since Chambers' death, national attention has been focused on the killing of black men by law enforcement officers. There was Eric Garner in Staten Island, Walter Scott in Charleston, South Carolina, and Freddie Gray in Baltimore. According to The Guardian's The Counted Project, which tracks police-involved deaths, over 900 people, a disproportionate percentage of whom were black, have been killed by police this year in the United States. Photo 13. Among the numerous pro-gun and pro-cop memes Glidden has posted to his Facebook wall over the past 4 years, since killing Chambers, there is a picture of a badge. Officer Wilson, I stand by you. August 9, 14. The badge reads. Wilson, a white officer in Ferguson, Missouri, shot and killed an 18-year-old black teen named Michael Brown on August 9, 2014. Brown's death sparked national protests and was a catalyst for the Black Lives Matter movement. Source: Facebook. The day Chambers died, his family gathered at Sharise Wells' house to mourn. The telephone rang, and Chris Wells answered. A week earlier, a friend had set Chambers up with an interview at a Kroger grocery store. He was calling to say he got the job.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. Please look for the next episode soon, and please ensure to share this with your friends and family. And please like this content and subscribe as a sign of support and for me to continue to provide this type of content to more people like you. Lastly, if you wish to support this content further, please visit the links provided in this publication. Thank you.